Welcome back. This is episode 104 of How to Perform at Your Best. These 100 level videos, if you remember, are looking at the major principles and perspectives, no matter your area of performance expertise. If we align ourselves and understand those, we can repeat these principles and perspectives in individual performances. I wanted to apologize to you for the brevity of episode 103, where I looked at what I think is the key principle of the psychology of human performance. It was only 9 minutes. Sometimes the most profound things come across in the most simple, direct way. Remember, I said the best performances are those that are allowed to emerge from deeply within you. Deeply within you were all your skills, experiences, practices, previous performances, levels of relaxation and concentration, all merged together so that it can come out in a fluid, integrated way. Before we go into principle 2, I wanted to share with you that there are really 3 basic zones of any kind of human performance. Each builds upon each other or can remain separate. This is much more than a semantic wordplay game. The 3 zones are optimal performances, maximal performances, and peak performances. Optimal performance is when you are emphasizing being consistent, efficient, staying deeply within yourselves. Most rehearsals and practices should be optimal performances, particularly early on in your season or the run of a play. Those early meaningful performances should also be optimal, where you are operating maybe 80, 90% of what you're capable of. At that level, you start tuning into your essential rhythms in your performance, from which you can base on them and build upon those. The next level are maximal performances. These are times during your season, during any kind of part in your career, you want to give an outstanding effort, maximally, whether it's the Olympic Games or an important recital or doing the GREs. Those should be maximal performances. What few people understand is that maximal performances spin off as a result of a series and sequence of optimal performances. Just like in your fitness levels, those of you who train aerobically, you've learned that you want to have your heart rate optimally 70, 80% of your maximum. At that level of that optimal level heart rate, then that builds the strength in terms of intensity and duration that you're in a position to give an all-out maximal performance at some point. My heart rate's been measured when I was young and fit at 220 beats a minute, maximally. So if I attempted every workout to go at 220 beats a minute, I would stroke out. That I learned through a good aerobic conditioning that I wanted to do 70 or 80% of my maximal, and those followed and built up for an occasional maximal performance. Optimal performance should be all of your practices, rehearsals, and maybe some initial performances, so that you're in a position then with the strength and the intensity and the connections so that you're in a position to give a rare maximal performance. The third dimension of performances is the rare and elusive peak performance. You'll find out through this whole series of videos that I've identified maybe 90, 92% of those elements that put you in a position where a peak performance can emerge. Again, you cannot force a peak performance. It comes out sometimes when the least expected, and it comes out almost in magic or mysterious ways. That the peak performance is something that you cannot dial into, but when it comes out, you can appreciate it, and learn from it. These three zones of human performance are important to understand. Doing most of your practices and rehearsals and some early performances optimally, where you're the most efficient and effective and rhythmical, connecting things. That will build up to an occasional maximal performance that is hopefully dialed in based on the optimal performances, knowing that you can only give maybe one or two maximal performances in a cycle, if you will. Occasionally and magically, sometimes the rare peak performance comes out. Now, some journalists and authors love the concept of peak performance because it's a literal sounding phrase. That the peak performance is magical in its own way. You cannot dial it in or force it out on command. And that is the holy grail of a lot of us in our performance lives, to be putting ourselves in a position where occasionally this wonderful peak performance emerges. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Here is principle 2 of the psychology of human performance. And that is, and follow me with this, every performance is a separate entity unique unto itself. Every performance is a separate entity unique unto itself, and it has absolutely no connection to any other performance unless you allow it to. Let me go through that whole thing again. Every performance is a separate, unique entity unto itself, and it has absolutely no connection to any other performance unless you allow it to. That last part is why a lot of us focus on things we cannot control, or when we have some disappointing performances, we give up. Golfers call it going on the bogey train, or some other performers say they're in a slump. Is that a lot of times, if we don't understand that every performance is separate, special, and unique unto itself, we start comparing these performances. That's why it's so hard to repeat a good performance or a maximal performance. You keep on comparing it. Well, last time I played this section in the concerto, that it went so smoothly and rhythmically. Or last time I was dominating my opponents. Or last time everything seemed so easy. When you're comparing yourself to other performances, you're linking them for the worst. Every performance is a separate, unique entity unto itself. So appreciate that. It has no relationship unless you allow it to, unless you start connecting all these things to drag yourself down. In that respect, there's a double edge to this performance concept called momentum. Most of us look at momentum as something negative. Few of us look at momentum as positive. You'll see later on in this video series how to start connecting some of these things on your own choice of connecting individual performances. They are special and unique unto itself. That means every practice, every rehearsal, every training session are separate performances. Every day is a new day to prove something to yourself in your performance area. Even though you've had some successful ones in previous days, see if you can approach the current day with eyes wide open, going out to find out how well you can do. They're separate, special performances. You might have heard of the concepts called their A game, your B game, your C game. Those are nice ways to categorize different kinds of performances. I'm always surprised about the impact some of these concepts have on people who haven't heard these before or are ready to hear for the first time. The last 5 or 6 semesters, I taught the Psychology of Human Performance course at my Western Nevada college. I always ask them at the end of the semester, what were some of the most lasting concepts you came up with that made the most sense and continue to make the most sense? And in always they'll say, well, I learned how to concentrate better. or I learned how to really trust myself better or relax better. Interestingly, a lot of my athletes and performing artists said the same thing. Of some of the most lasting things, they said that to start relying on their B game. You see, it's from your B game that your A game sometimes emerges. Also from your B game, you can resurrect a challenging performance during the performance when it's dipped down into a C game. When you expect yourself to turn on your A game right away, you're setting yourself up for failure. Is that a lot of my athletes and performing artists figured out that the B game or the B plus game was good enough unto itself. And you could perform pretty well, optimally or maximally, at that B level. That also the rare A performance comes from that base of the B game, starting out being consistent, efficient, staying within yourself, playing to your strengths. Those are good enough in themselves at your B level. Sometimes it will happen you go to the A game. One of the questions I've always asked performing artists or different types of individual athletes or team athletes is how many times during their season, what's the percentage of their performances did they have their A game? The results may surprise you. That some people say, scoff and say, I've never had an A game. Some people say maybe once or twice during my season do I have my A game. Some people say maybe 15, 17% of their performances are their A games. Such incidences are elusive and wonderful. And you don't need to have your A game all the time. Most times, especially in a competition, having your B performance, being consistent, being efficient and effective, minimizing errors at that B level, or what I call a B plus level, is good enough to have a successful outcome. So learn how to trust yourself optimally to have B level performances. So just what is your B game? This is an important question to ask yourself. So spend some time during this video right now, or certainly after the video right now, and list all of those core elements representative of your B game. Start with 5 or 6 of those elements. This is difficult because you've been told so much during your lives of what to do or how to approach something. No, why don't you do some time reflecting right now on what are the key core elements of your B game, where you're an optimal performing at an efficient, effective, consistent, rhythmical manner. Here are some things. Of course, relaxing, centering, concentrating, playing one shot at a time, repeatability, purposeful yet fluid, having an ongoing commitment and living those commitments, having a clear and calm mind, immersing yourself into the process of each individual shot or element of that performance, having a performance cue, one of the things we'll talk about in the 200 level series. Believing in yourself, staying doggedly positive, being persistent, having fun and enjoying the process, being creative, even loving the struggle are frequent elements people report about their B game. If those things stimulate some things in your mind about your own B level performances, write those things down, because those are the things on which to rely, on which to build. Knowing these elements can be critical for consistent performances. There was, you might have heard this, that the Delphi oracle in ancient Greece had this concept of know thyself. Many people have said maybe a modern day oracle would be yourself. The letter B can be your B level performances on which to appreciate. Sometimes we can say our B's are B level games where I am being my best self based on my B or B plus games. From that level, ongoing performances improve on their own. Giving B level performances, B plus performances are those wonderful times where your rare, occasional, maximal, or A performance evolves from. Again, if you try to force yourself into switching on an A performance, it's never going to work. A level performances come from a foundation of B performances. Even if you stay at a B or B plus level, that is quite good enough in most situations. Hopefully, these B level performances can help you be your best. Give some thought to this second one. Every performance is a separate entity, unique unto itself, and has absolutely no relationship to any other performance unless you somehow allowed it to connect together in a negative way. Appreciate each level of performance. Appreciate each practice session. You start anew. And that means every day, every practice session, every fitness training session, every rehearsal session is a new opportunity to build upon what you've achieved already in the past and seeing if you can integrate it at higher levels now. Trust your B level performances. Better performances emanate from there. We shall see you next time for principles 3 and 4. Thank you.